Hey solos. Okay, so you're going to Disney World by yourself. How do you even make decisions about where you're going to eat? Well, here's a solo spoiler for you. You're going to need to do some research in order for you to choose the best options for your preferences and your price. Also, make sure you do try something new. Push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. Hi, everyone. I am Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do. And welcome to Solo Magic, the podcast about the magic of going to Disney World solo. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the different categories of restaurants that you can choose from when you're going to Disney World by yourself. In order for you to be able to make the best decision, the most optimal decision for you as a solo traveler. Now, because this is a new podcast, make sure that you subscribe and rate in order for other people to know about this podcast as well. And follow me on Instagram, Disney_solo_magic, so that you too can interact with me and let me know where your favorite restaurants are. All right, let's get into it. In my last episode, it was a very long episode about the different categories of hotels in order for you to think about the categories to choose the one that's best for you. And if you thought that 25 hotels was a lot, think about the over 400 food options at Walt Disney World for you to choose from. I mean, that number is staggeringly overwhelming. But again, with a little bit of research and really knowing what you want to do on your solo vacation, you can make the best choice for you. And remember, there aren't actually any bad choices. Like maybe you wouldn't go back to that restaurant or you didn't love that meal, but you still made a choice for you by yourself so that you can know that next time when you go, you might not want to go to that restaurant, but you still were able to do that research to find an option that may have been different than what you would have done if you went with others. As always, I'm not necessarily going to be providing you with restaurant recommendations in this episode because, you know what you like. You don't need to follow what I like. You do you, bibbity bobbity boo. If you just want to have hot dogs and hamburgers on your whole solo trip, then do that. But you should also know that there are places that you can get a really extra fancy, delicious burger. And maybe, again, with a little bit of research, you'll have that burger, a most delicious, fancy, expensive burger. I mean, fancy isn't always expensive, or is it? I don't know. I mean, okay, so a fancy burger, I know a lot of people love the burger at Steakhouse 71, which is in the Contemporary Resort, but my favorite burger ever, in the history of eating burgers, Oh, now I'm thinking, is it? Okay, it's definitely the top 5 burgers, was at the Grand Floridian Cafe. It was a burger, and then it had a layer of lobster. And then and this was the best part, there was this flat fried cheese, like a fried cheese stick, but flat. So when you bit into it, it tasted all cheesy, but it was also crunchy. Oh my God, it was so delicious. I think that was the only burger I've ever actually had at Walt Disney World, and I don't think I could top that. Now, when I was thinking about organizing the information for this podcast, I was getting kind of overwhelmed, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be details upon details upon details, which is not very interesting necessarily, but it will wind up being longer than the hotel episode. So I'm trying to simplify it for myself and for you. And let's just say that there are 3 categories of food providing places at the Walt Disney Resort. Now, just a reminder, when I say Walt Disney Resort is not just Magic Kingdom and your hotel. The Walt Disney Resort property in Orlando is the size of San Francisco. It is double the size of Manhattan. When you are going to Walt Disney Resort, you're essentially going to a city-size hotel. And as I've said in other episodes, to me, that is a great part when you're traveling solo because you have so many things available to you in this safe, positive, fun Disney bubble that you can really kind of explore and push the limits of where you want to eat. And just a reminder, again, like I said in other episodes, all of the hotels are included in this city-size hotel. So just because you're not staying at a hotel doesn't mean you can't go to that hotel to eat. In fact, they want you to do that. All of the like super fancy restaurants are actually at hotels. So it gives you a really good opportunity to go and explore one of those hotels, as well as have a meal you wouldn't normally have. Let me just give you an example before I like get into it. In the last episode that I said that all of the Disney World resorts have a quick service, like grab and go, food court style, like restaurant. So the All Stars and the Pop Century and Art of Animation, all those value resorts only have that type of restaurant. And then the more you go up the categories of hotels, the more options they have for restaurants for you. But again, all those deluxe resorts also have a quick service restaurant. And it's called Captain Cook's at Polynesian. That's where their like cheap quick service is. And when I went there once after going to the spa, I actually saw that they had like a really great like snack package that had carrots and apple slices and pita chips and oh, there's definitely something sweet, but I also bought a Moana cupcake when I was there. And so I had these other options, even though the like quick service price point was my price point, but going to the quick service, grab and go at the deluxe resort actually had more options than Pop Century where I was staying. So even though you're like, oh, don't worry, all quick service at hotels are made the same, they're not. Like, just go and explore. Like, they want you to go and explore. And as a solo person, it makes it a little bit easier for me, like I said in that first episode, for me to go and explore because I'm just one person, Okay, so 3 categories of food providing spaces. Now, for some of you who have traveled to Disney World a lot, you might already be like, no, there's a lot more than 3 categories. She definitely does not know what she's talking about. Okay, look, I'm just trying to simplify it, everyone. I know there's like categories within categories within categories. I'm really just trying to simplify things. Like, but don't worry, I will get to everything. I promise you I will get to everything. And if I don't, then connect with me on Instagram and let me know what your favorite like category of restaurants is, I guess, and where you love to eat as a person who's traveling to Disney solo. Just a reminder, my Instagram is Disney_solo_magic. Okay, 3 categories. The first category are snacks. Now, in the snacks, I'm also including like coffee purveyors like Joffrey's or Starbucks. Snacks are pretty self-explanatory. You go up, you get a snack, and you leave. These aren't like, you can't have a meal necessarily with snacks. You might be able to put like 2 or 3 snacks together and have a meal, but hey, again, do you bibbity bobbity boo if you want your lunch to be fancy popcorn, a chocolate covered apple that has Mickey ears on it, and an egg roll, like hey, that actually sounds great. But those are all snacks. It's not really like a full meal. And again, I'm including coffee shops in this. Now, when I have gone with my mother is a bit of a coffee snob, shall we say. She only really likes fancy espresso, so I know more about the espresso options on Walt Disney World property than, oh gosh, a lot of people. So if you too care about espresso, then listen up. So you can't get an espresso at the value resorts. You can get an espresso at the moderate resorts, but usually the coffee isn't very good quality. At the deluxe resorts, you can get a much nicer quality espresso, and there's often like fancier options for espresso too when you are in the deluxe resorts or have like a deluxe experience. So in the Coronado Hotel, which is a moderate resort, but they have a club level, which is like an extra perk that an extra fee that you would pay, and there's like a club room that has food all day, which is really great if there's 2 of you. It's not really worth it for one. And the espresso there, I have heard is very, very good. The espresso at the Riviera Resort, also very, very good. At Magic Kingdom, a very helpful cast member told us that there's only two places to get espresso at Magic Kingdom, which is the Starbucks on Main Street and the Joffrey's in Tomorrowland. I don't know. Why am I going down this espresso? I feel like I need to make sure other people know this knowledge. But again, like when you go and get a coffee, there's also like baked goods and stuff there for your snacks. I don't particularly like getting the baked goods at Starbucks or Joffrey's when I'm at Disney World because there's so many other places to get sweet, fun treats. But if you're there and you want a giant donut, then go to Joffrey's, get a nice espresso and your giant donut. The next option up is quick service. Now, I recognize that Disney World can be quite complicated these days. There's so many options, and there's like Genie Plus, and there's, I don't know, I know it can be overwhelming, and I don't necessarily want to tell you to just like go and do your own research. But actually in this particular episode, when we're talking about restaurants, I do want to tell you to go and do your own research. Now you can do that through the Disney app, but I actually find it's a lot easier, especially when it comes to fancier restaurants, which is the next category, to sort and filter on the website. So I'm just gonna encourage you to think about that. But I say that because with quick service, it's also good to do a little scouting ahead of time because you want the best for your taste level and your price, and you might be surprised about an option that is not that far away from where you're planning on being, and to go that extra step, both literally and figuratively, to like find what that option is and then to eat there. An example that I'm thinking about is like Columbia Harbor House is my favorite quick service restaurant at Magic Kingdom, but you are passing a lot of quick service restaurants leading up to that because it's kind of, far back on that little walk before you turn around into the other part of Fantasyland. And so if you are doing that research about, oh, what are the quick service restaurants, then you can see, oh yeah, like I do want a lobster roll for lunch. I'm going to eat it at Columbia Harbor House or whatever. So quick service restaurants are restaurants that are like a fast food style, not in terms of quality of food necessarily, but the fact that you go up to the counter, you order, they call your number, you take your tray, and then you find some place to eat. Now, a lot of people will tell you to mobile order, and I am going to join that chorus. Definitely mobile order. So on your app, you can identify where you can order ahead of time, pick your time, and then go back and pick the food up at that time. Now, as somebody that likes to talk to people and also likes to interface with people that are doing like service work around us to connect us all with a greater sense of community, even though they're working and you are there as a client or a visitor, when I started mobile ordering, I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. I don't need to talk to a cashier. This is way, way easier. And if I really wanted to talk to somebody, I can say thank you to the person that I'm getting the food from. Like, they're wonderful too, Mobile order is so wonderful because you can avoid the lines, number one. You can choose a time period where you are going to come back. Now, sometimes it's like right away, which is great, but also there are times where you're like, okay, I know I'm going to want to eat in an hour. Let me order something and then stand in line for this ride. The third thing, which I love as a solo traveler, or perhaps someone who likes to customize things, is that you can customize things on the app. Like you can identify if there's something that you want or you want a substitution. And when you're ordering from a cashier, you don't necessarily know all those options. Like if it says that it comes with fries, you're like, okay, great, it comes with fries. But if you are looking at it on mobile order and see you can also, rather than have fries, choose from like hush puppies or corn on the cob or apples, then that gives you more freedom to be able to have the meal that you want. Most, if not all, of the quick service restaurants have mobile order, so definitely check that out. Sometimes on the app too, they'll identify if there's like a featured specialty meal or beverage, and that's cool too because if you are ordering ahead of time, you don't necessarily like see the promotional stuff in front of you if you're standing in line, and therefore you can be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to try something new. All of the price points for the quick service are basically the same. Like with a drink and tax, you're probably looking at about $25. When I was thinking about this episode, I was like, oh, no, it's like $15. And that's maybe what it was like a few years ago. But, it definitely goes up, especially with things like tax and tip. So keep that in mind. It's a inexpensive option, but Disney in and of itself is pricey. So make sure you do your research. Go on the app or go online, look at quick service or look at mobile order, what's available for mobile order, and just start kind of poking around what's there. There's a lot of quick service, for example, at Magic Kingdom, and you want to choose the one that has kind of options that you want. At Hollywood Studios, for example, all of the quick service restaurants are like themed to the areas that they are in. So there are these like Pop-Tarts, that you can get at in Toy Story Land. I don't spend a lot of time in Hollywood Studios, so forgive me for my non-precise language. You can get these like Pop-Tarts that everyone says are really delicious. I personally haven't had them, although I'm going to try to have them over the next couple trips to Disney. And the next couple trips are between now and June, so we'll see. You can't get those on Sunset Boulevard, for example, because the Pop-Tarts is like a special Toy Story reference. And on Sunset Boulevard, you can get these big ice cream sundaes, and they are, again, themed to the area that you're in. So just kind of keep that in mind, too. That's why doing that little bit of research is good. Now, when I'm at Disney, I've always had really, really excellent meals. So I never want to have kind of standard food I can get anywhere else. I'm not really interested in eating like hot dogs or hamburgers or pizza or chicken fingers necessarily when I am there. That's not what I go to because there is like a salmon option at that particular quick service, or there is this extra special thing that you can only get at this one quick service location. So I like to go and do that research ahead of time so I can get something unique rather than just kind of something basic and easy, because I am at Disney World and I want to have these kind of cool experiences. But again, if you're interested in just doing burgers and hot dogs and hamburgers and pizza and chicken fingers, that's wonderful, but still do that research to figure out maybe like what even has the best seating around it for you just to relax and enjoy that lunch or dinner. All right, let's move on to the third category. The third, definitely most complicated category. Complicated because there's like categories within categories. So let's see how clear I can be, which is sit-down restaurants. Sit-down restaurants are just what they sound. They are restaurants that you sit down, that a server comes to your table. Even if it's a buffet, a server still will come to your table and take your drink order and bus your table, all of that. Most, if not all, table service restaurants you can make reservations for ahead of time, and some people get really anxious about it. You can see that if you follow any of the like blogs or Facebook groups about like the anxiety of, oh, I have 60 days out for my hotel reservation. Let me make sure I get all of my dining reservations. Now, personally, I go on the off period, so I generally have always gotten the reservations that I wanted. Like, definitely for sure, there are restaurants that I have tried to get reservations for like every trip for a year, and I've never been lucky. But I don't kind of dwell on that because there's always another restaurant that you can go to. I recognize that's the benefit of being an annual pass holder or having the luxury or privilege to go a couple times a year. But even if this is going to be like a one and done solo trip, don't worry if you don't get that main reservation that you want. There are ways to kind of work around that. But again, do your research to know what like your second awesome choices and your third awesome choices, because you definitely will get one of those. Now, not all table service restaurants are created equal. And that's again what's useful about doing your research on the website because you can really narrow down by price. There are restaurants where, it's a very kind of like reasonable price range to have a dinner. And then there's restaurants that you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm just eating snacks for the rest of the day because this will blow my budget. They're all very transparent about prices on the website. You and the app, like you can't look at a menu without seeing the prices. So don't feel like there's anyone's going to trick you. Like just do that research and think about your budget. But separate from price, all sit down restaurants are not created equal either. So there's restaurants that are a la carte, which means you're just ordering from a menu. It's a French term meaning that you are getting it from the cart, the card, like you're just ordering from a menu. And that's actually quite useful when you're traveling by yourself because you might not want to have a lot of food and you just want to choose a couple things. That's great. Then there are restaurants, and there are increasingly more restaurants that are what they call prix-fixe, which again is a French term meaning price fixed, a fixed price. And you pay one thing, like one cost, let's say $45, and you get an appetizer, a main, an entree, and then a dessert. And you get to choose from what those are. In my experience at Disney World, like there aren't bad selections when you do a prix-fixe. There's usually quite a lot of options for you. And I actually like a prix-fixe menu, even just in my daily life, because I don't know, it takes out some decision making and you also like know what you're getting in terms of price. There are a few restaurants that have both a la carte and prix-fixe. I'm thinking right now of the sit-down crepe restaurant in Epcot. So there is a menu and you can choose your crepe or your galette. A galette is a savory crepe. Or you can do a prix-fixe menu where you pay one price and get like a soup or a salad to start with, then a galette, a savory crepe, and then a crepe, a sweet crepe, and a drink. A non-alcoholic drink, I'm pretty sure. So that's a really good option. I'll tell you though, that prix-fixe option at the crepe restaurant is better if you have two people that have like half appetites. That's a lot. It's a lot of crepe type food, and I think that might be a lot. So my recommendation, if you are traveling solo, I actually really like going to that crepe restaurant. I'm trying to think about whether I should list all the reasons why. I'll just tell you really quickly. I really like to make a reservation at that crepe restaurant, especially during all of the food festivals, because sometimes you don't know what the lines at the food festival booths are going to be like, and it gets really hot. So if I know there is a place that I can go and sit down and eat in the air conditioning, it makes it a little bit easier to wait in line for some other festival foods. So if you're traveling solo, I don't recommend doing the prix-fixe. If you're traveling with like two people, I would, and then you can share it. But if you're going to that restaurant solo, I think it's a little bit too much food. What I would recommend is to get your crepe or your galette and like close out your bill and then go and find a festival booth and, eat some other things. If you're like, oh, I really wish I had another crepe or another galette, there's also a takeout quick service crepe restaurant right next to the sit-down restaurant that you can go and get a quick service crepe. But that way you're not overloading on food. Now, adjacent to the notion of a prix-fixe menu, there's also buffets where you pay one price and you get to eat whatever you want. I always was thinking like going to a buffet by myself is kind of weird, maybe kind of weird because I don't know. I don't know why I always thought that it was kind of weird, but then I did it and I was like, oh no, this is great. Thank you. This is great. I'll be doing this again 100%. So don't worry if you are by yourself and you think going to a buffet is weird. I did, and I really missed a lot of good buffet eating time. There are buffets for breakfast and dinner at a lot of different restaurants, and there's a few restaurants, especially in the parks, that have buffets during the day for lunch. Usually the lunch buffets and the dinner buffets are basically the same price. I'm thinking of Mickey and Vine in Hollywood Studios, but again, take a look at what your preference is and your price point. Another type of like buffet type restaurant is family style eating. And right after COVID, all the buffets turned to family style, and most of the buffets have gone back, but there's still a lot of family style restaurants around. So, family style is also all you can eat, but they bring a big platter of food to your table, and you eat from that platter of food. And when you want more, they bring you more. It's called family style because everyone in your party eats from that same platter. And so if you're with Joe who loves ribs, like Joe will eat all those ribs and you can have the chicken or whatever. Like it's family style, so you're all choosing from the same platter of food and then it gets refreshed when you are done, which is great. It's not a great option though going solo. Essentially, if you're doing it solo, it's a prefix menu, right? Like if you're going solo, you're just choosing or eating what they choose for you, and you can get more if you want. But there is like a limit to how much you can eat. And I do find that when I am eating with others, I can often eat more because, like, we are talking and we're trying different things and it becomes like this social experience of everyone trying and eating from the same large serving platter. But when you're by yourself, like usually you do have like slightly quicker meals, and I don't know, I don't really think it's a great option if you're traveling solo. I went to the new like Woody's Rodeo Roundup barbecue restaurant at Hollywood Studios, and I don't eat a lot of barbecue normally. I don't eat a lot of meat um, normally. And so the food was really good and I really enjoyed it. They brought me like extra sides as much as I want, but I definitely did not take advantage of how much you can eat and enjoy at that restaurant. And I don't think it would be different if it was all foods that I really enjoyed anyway. It's just family style is for families, it's not for people traveling alone. So I wouldn't recommend it, but again, if that works for you, do that. For the most part, everything that I have mentioned is kind of like a similar-ish category, price category. Like, yes, a buffet will probably be more than an a la carte restaurant. A buffet is certainly going to be more expensive than the sit-down crepe restaurant at Epcot. But I find that those are all kind of like similar, similar price-ish. But then, and I guess I'm comparing it to like the fancier sit down restaurants. So there are a lot of restaurants that are mainly, again, in the hotels that are like fancy restaurant, fancy prices, fancy atmosphere, all very fancy. And I usually love going to those restaurants like for one meal, you know, every trip or every two trips because it is definitely more money. You're getting more for it, more quality, more like fanciness, all of that stuff. And I really recommend as a solo person checking that out. I don't know if you can hear my neighborhood is waking up for spring with all the cars and trucks around. It's time to go back. Anyway, don't feel like you don't have access to those more expensive restaurants just because you're by yourself. Like, no. In fact, because it's more of a quote grown up atmosphere, you might actually find yourself really, really enjoying the experience of one of the fancier sit down restaurants going by yourself. So definitely check those out. Again, do your research, think about your preference and your price point. It might be something you do want to save up for like a big thing at the end of your trip. The other thing I want to mention in this sit down restaurant category are character meals. So there's a lot of options for character meals around Disney World, both in the hotels and in the parks. And a lot of the times they are family style or buffet. And you sit there and you eat, and the characters come around and they take pictures with you, and it's really, really fun. Sometimes people are worried, like, oh, if I go up to the buffet, I'm going to miss a character, but there are blueberries. Blueberries are the cast members who are not in costume, who like watch the interactions to make sure they're running appropriately. There are blueberries cast members who will make sure that you'll get FaceTime with all of the characters, even if you go up for a buffet. So don't worry about that. And I've seen a lot of people like worried about doing a character meal by themselves as an adult because it's like, oh, is that cringy? Is that embarrassing? Like, oh. Now, in all of these cases, no matter where you're eating, I also know for a lot of people, the idea of eating alone seems really intimidating, especially at a sit down restaurant. And that's going to be a topic, and character meals are going to be a topic that we'll cover in its own episode. So I just want to leave you with the fact that, like, it's not cringy. Nobody is judging you, especially not the cast members. In many cases, the cast members will go out of their way to make sure you're comfortable. So don't let that fear stop you from a really, really good meal. And I actually think that that should be like a sticker that you should put everywhere, and use that as your life motto. Don't let fear get in the way of a really good meal, or don't let fear get in the way of a really good cupcake. It's very important. I've been to the majority of character meals. I've never been with children. I have been with other adults, but I've never been with children. And every time I think it's going to be weird or awkward or I'm apprehensive, it's the exact opposite. It is always really fun. Just a reminder that, like, the cast members who are in costume are there to make you have a really good time. So one time I went to Cinderella's table where they have princesses, for my birthday, actually. And I was really great. It wasn't a bummer. Like, I was really excited to be there, but I thought to myself, like, oh, I don't want to make other people, like the cast members in costumes, feel kind of awkward that I'm sitting here for my birthday by myself. So I'll just say, like, hi and just kind of move on. But, like, no, all those girls, they came up to me, they all started conversation, they all complimented this or made a comment about that. Like, it was all great. They are there to interact with you. So even if you don't know what to do, they do know what to do. It's always really fun. Like, go do a character meal, even if you think it's going to be weird. It's not going to be weird. The food's going to be delicious, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so I have gone through all three categories. I'm in the kind of time expectation I set for myself. I'm very proud of that. And the takeaway is, make sure you do some research ahead of time so you know what is best for your price and your preference. But, and this is something I didn't spend a lot of time really focusing on, make sure you try something new. Like, the idea of solo travel is to push your boundaries a little bit, and just try something new. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You wasted $10 and you have to order something else. I don't know. Is that the worst thing? That's not the worst thing. Don't let fear get in the way of a bad meal, right? Okay, well, I think that's all. Oh, although I know that some of you are like, that's not all. She's missing something. She's missing a giant category. This woman knows nothing. No, solos. I know what I'm missing. I'm missing lounges. I'm missing lounges and bars, right? You know I am missing lounges and bars. If you have traveled solo by yourself, or if you are an adult that has traveled to Disney before, you know about the magic of ordering from lounges and bars. Not just the sit-down restaurants, not just the quick service, not just a snack. You know the magic of lounges and bars. And that's why I wasn't even going to cover it in this episode. No, thank you, because I am going to do a whole separate bonus episode that's going to come out later this week where I'm just talking about lounges and bars. And even if you don't drink, because I don't drink, they are the best option for eating as a solo person who wants to have kind of a upscale adult type of food options available to them, but might not want to deal with reservations or might not want to sit by themselves at like a formal table. So don't worry, I didn't miss it. I got you. I know. I know stuff. I also haven't talked about the food festivals in this episode, and that's again because I'm going to do a whole separate bonus episode focusing on the Flower and Garden Festival once I get back from my trip. You see, there's so much to cover. And oh gosh, I don't want to say that to make it seem overwhelming. I want to say that because, again, it is like a buffet, like a literal and figurative buffet of options for you as a solo traveler, which is why going to Disney solo is so great. All right, so until later this week when I drop the bonus episode on lounges, I will talk to you then. Bye, all.